this is an overview of the instrument panel. November 69744. It's a 1974 Cessna 310Q. I've had some people online ask me if I could make a video of the cockpit tour, the instrument panel. So let's start over here first with the circuit breaker and electrical panel. Obviously, these are all the circuit breakers. I put a red cap on the circuit breakers for the cabin heater and the autopilot. The idea being those might be the things that might be most critical if they malfunction and I need to pull the circuit breaker. So this is the red flashing rotating beacon on the tail. This is our position or navigation lights. This is the wingtip strobes. This is an operative. This at one time would have been the propeller de-ice. That is the pitot heat switch. The taxi light switch on the nose wheel. And the retractable landing lights. So there's a off position in the middle. The down position is, turn off the radio. The down position extends them and illuminates the lights or turns the lights on. Off would leave the lights down but leave them off. Then the retract position will stow the lights flush with the tip tank. And then once they automatically turn off once they're stowed, and then I put the switch back to the off position. That all makes sense. And then that's the avionics master and the rheostats for the panel lights. So on the pilot's primary flight panel, starting over on the left, we have a wind-up clock. It just winds up, and I think it lasts about 8 days. Manually adjustable. We have the slave switch for the HSI. So right now it's a slave, which means the HSI is getting its heading information from the gyro compass on board. Or if I put it in the free position, then I can use the counterclockwise, clockwise switch to manually set the compass card on the HSI, just like you would a directional gyro. The airspeed indicator in both knots and miles per hour. Red line is VMC, minimum control speed on one engine. And then the blue line is your single engine best rate of climb speed. Turn coordinator. The Garmin G5, I'm not going to go into every aspect of this, just briefly. It's got airspeed tape with our ground speed, altitude bug, our track, altimeter setting, the barometric pressure setting, and the altitude tape. The horizontal situation indicator, HSI, with both the course knob for setting the course and then the heading bug. This is the turn and bank push to test light. If the turn coordinator loses power, that illuminates. The altimeter, rate of climb. This is the autopilot select switch, so it's now the autopilot's flying the airplane, and it's flying it off nav 1, which is the Garmin GPS. This is the vacuum operated attitude indicator, so we have multiple backups here. We have 2 vacuum pumps, 1 on each engine. This is vacuum operated. This is electric. We have 2 alternators, and this has a backup battery as well, so we've got tons of redundancy for flying on instruments. This is the CDI, course deviation indicator for nav number 2, which is this box here. So the Garmin's nav COM 1, the older King radio is nav COM 2, And this is my directional gyro. This isn't set right now, but radio stack's pretty straightforward. The audio panel, the Garmin 530W with WAS, and the Navcom number 2. That is our storm scope. Detects lightning strikes, and the engine monitor. So JPI EDM 760 engine monitor. So that is showing me exhaust gas temperature and cylinder head temperature. On the auxiliary panel in front of the co-pilot, we have manifold pressure, the tachometer, and the fuel flow.
So I think the fuel flow gauge deserves its own little detailed explanation, so I'm adding this after the fact. The fuel flow gauge on my airplane is in pounds per hour. The maximum takeoff pressure is 20.1 psi, the red arrow, which is 140 pounds per hour. And so my system is set up, my Continental IO470 fuel injection system is set up so at sea level, my needles come all the way around to where the red arrow is, to about 20.1 psi. However, there is a range of values denoted by the white arc that are in theory acceptable, but most owners, including myself, we have our system set up so we get maximum fuel pressure on takeoff because fuel is cool. So the more fuel you put in, the cooler your cylinder head temperatures will be. The blue rectangles are fuel flow at various altitudes during climb out. You have two ways that you can operate the airplane. Climb option A, which is what I do, is RPM at 2450, which is top of the green arc, and the manifold pressure wide open throttle. So I just leave the firewalls throttled after takeoff. Therefore, as I climb, if I adjust my fuel flow to the various altitudes you see there as I climb, 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, the three red arrows, then on my setup, it keeps my EGTs about 200 to 250 degrees rich of peak EGT, and my cylinder head temperatures are nice and cool at those fuel flows. Climb option B, which is the way the manual suggests you do it, is RPM of 2450 and manifold pressure at the top of the green on the manifold pressure gauge. If you do that, that's a 75% power climb, and you can, in theory, lean your mixture to the blue triangle during climb, but I don't like doing that. I find my engines run kind of on the hot side. My cylinder temperatures run on the hot side. So I'm doing what Mike Bush recommends, is to just leave your throttles firewalled after takeoff during the climb. And then finally, there's 4 green rectangles, which are various percent powers, 45, 55, 65, and 75% power. Those are for cruise. And right now it's covered over, but I'm cruising at approximately 55% power, which in this airplane is about 66 pounds per hour each engine, which is 11 gallons per hour each engine, so 22 gallons per hour, and that's giving me 170 to 175 knot true airspeed, somewhere in that range, depending on temperatures.
The tri-cluster gauges, the sun's kind of blocking that one, so I'll just concentrate on this one. Oil pressure on top, cylinder head temperature, which again, this is an analog single probe, so it's kind of redundant, but required anyway. The backup, and then oil temperature. And then this is our fuel quantity. We got about half fuel in the tip tanks. And then this switch down here selects the tank, so for the indicator. So since we're on the main tanks, if I want to see how much fuel's in the aux, if I push that down, it shows us how much fuel is in the aux tank, which they're basically empty. And likewise, if we're burning fuel out of the aux tank, then I can hold it up, see how much fuel is in the main tank. The gauge automatically switches over when I select the fuel tank with the fuel selectors on the floor. Finally, the last few things, we have the outside air temperature gauge and the suction gauge. And then that's the old ammeter for the prop de-ice, which is inoperative. And then there's a hops meter, a couple hops meters down here. Go down to the bottom panel. Those are the fuel pumps. Low for takeoff and landing. And anytime vapor clearing is required. This is the prime switch for starting. It's spring loaded, so if I hold it left, it primes the left engine. Vice versa, if I hold it right, it primes the right engine. And then these are the starter switches. The master switch, left and right alternator switch, and then the 4 engine magnetos. The gear selector, gear unlock light, which illuminates when the gear's in transit, and the 3 gear down green lights for when the gear is down and locked. I also have my ammeter select, so I can see, let's see if I can do this better this way. I can see the output of each alternator, left, right alternator output, if the battery is being charged or discharged, and the system voltage. And then these are the alternator failure lights that illuminates when alternator fails. This is our flap switch. That's the cigarette lighter, which will have the USB in, and then this is the cabin heat switch and the cabin overheat light, which will illuminate if the heater shuts itself down due to an overheat. And then these are the various airflows selectors for defrost is the far left one. The temperature control is the heater thermostat, and then cabin air and forward cabin air for ventilation. Also down here are the alternate air selectors. This is in case your induction gets iced up, then you can pull these out and it will pull air in from the engine cowling. That's the throttle friction. This is the trim tab, throttles, propeller, mixture controls, and then finally the autopilot. And this autopilot works great for basically a 40-something-year-old autopilot. I detail in my other videos how that autopilot works. That's kind of it, basically. I hope that's been helpful if you're interested in all the controls inside of a Cessna 310. Thanks for watching.